Hi there again. I hope you're having an amazing journey in the retouching world and you're doing fantastic. If not, I'm sure you're doing your best to make it all fantastic. Well, today we're going to focus on another element of the face which depicts the emotions. You see, a couple lessons ago, I guess 1 or 2 lessons, we talked about retouching eyes, and we learned that eyes are the windows to the soul and how important it is to work with the eyes and to pay attention to it. Similarly, can you tell what are the other areas that really depict the emotion of the human face? Well, it cannot be the nose, cannot be the ears. It has to be the mouth. Now, when it comes to mouth, there are 2 elements that we focus on in retouching. Number 1, lips, and number 2, teeth. And these are the 2 elements that we're going to focus on today. So without any further ado, let's get started. Back in the magical world of Photoshop, and let's start with something simple that you're going to come across in the real world. Slowly and gradually, we'll get to more advanced examples. Let's take a look at this young lady. Now, if you zoom in, her teeth looks absolutely all right, and you can leave it at that. However, if you want to clean it up even more, or if the client wants it, if the model wants it, you can move forward with it. Now, if I were to really nitpick, I know her teeth is beautiful. I wish I had teeth like her, but still, if you want to work on it, even if it's so beautiful, if you really want to fix the faults of the light or the camera on the teeth, you would notice that there are a little bit yellow patches at the top that we can whiten. Maybe this is an advertisement for a toothpaste. We don't want to have a natural portrait. Maybe this is an advertisement. So in that case, they have to kind of extra brighten the teeth. So for those rare situations, here's what we have to do. And this is one of the most realistic examples. You won't come across teeth with more challenges every day. All right. So let's go ahead and first of all, let's whiten the teeth. Fix the problems that you see first. If the shape of the teeth was something which you wanted to fix first, do that first. All right. A lot of people ask, how should I start? What should be the process? Well, when you're working with Photoshop, always fix the problems or do the bigger things first or do the obvious things first. So in this case, I see that, all right, so a little bit yellowness in the teeth is a little problem. So let's fix that. If it fixes everything, stop there. If you still see a problem, then continue. Make sense? That is how the workflow goes. So to fix the yellows, we have already learned how to work the hue saturation, and we're going to use the same technique right here. So click on the adjustment layer icon right over there and then choose hue saturation. We have really gone in depth into how to target specific colors, and if you have not watched that lesson yet, please do go back and watch the complete masterclass on hue saturation. All right, so here we go. Let's make the hue saturation a little larger. It is already larger, and a little smaller. Okay, now all we have to do is, with the help of the hand right over there, just click on one of the yellow patches. As you can see from the drop down, it already gets to yellows. If it gets to reds, don't worry. It just means that those patches are really falling in the red areas. Nothing to worry about there. All right, now you need to take the hue and the saturation all the way to the right just to see which areas are being affected. You can also take the lightness to the left or right as well for identification purposes to see which areas are being affected. I'm going to leave the lightness at 0, hue and saturation to the right. Now, we need to work with these range sliders to just fine tune in and just target it just on the patch areas. All right. So spot on that area. Make the range first of all very, very narrow. Then move the range around. And just when it begins to select those areas, stop. And then slowly and gradually increase it. Now, we don't want to increase it so much that the gums are selected as well. Find a sweet spot. So we can start from here and make the range a little bit softer. We have learned about this in the hue saturation lesson. And make the transition a little bit softer, not too much. Okay. And on the right hand side, you can go as much as you want. Now let's bring the saturation back to 0 and the hue as well back to 0. If you double click on it, it'll automatically come back to 0. But since I'm using a pen, sometimes when you double click, the pen slides. Anyway, so now let's zoom out. It's important to zoom out because once we are zoomed in, we just tend to work it too much. Now you can make the panel smaller And now let's work with these. It already has that area selected. Now let's go ahead and first try decreasing the saturation. Now focus on the teeth and nowhere else, okay? If you focus on the other areas, as you can see, other yellow areas are also being affected. Don't worry about that. Just focus on the teeth. If you have to zoom in right now, you can. After masking, zoom out. So this looks all right to me. Now you can also brighten it a little bit by just increasing the lightness. You can also play with the hue and make it probably a little bit reddish. Now this is just a basic adjustment. You can work on this later. You can fine tune it later because this is an adjustment layer and non-destructive. So select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I. Now the greatest advantage of targeting specific colors using hue saturation is that you don't have to be very accurate with the mask because we have adjusted the range in such a way that it does not affect the gums. Crazy nice, isn't it? So select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I. Now simply take the brush with white as the foreground color, flow and opacity at 100. Make sure the blend mode is normal. Just paint over the teeth area. Okay. As I told you, you don't have to be accurate here. Now once you have painted, you see a little bit of the gum is being affected. Now you can just simply play with the range, do whatever you wish. So I'm just going to make the range a little bit to the right hand side now. As you can see, these areas are getting fixed. If you go too much, you have to find that sweet spot. If you go too much, parts of that will become yellow. So be careful of that. If you still want a little more, the original color of the gum right here, just mask it in. So select the mask with black as the foreground color. Just paint that area in black. That's it. That area was also yellow. That's why it was just kind of coming up again. So anyway, so you can do that in certain areas where you wanted a little more of that. But in most cases, you won't have to do this, okay? This is just, I'm showing you what are the possibilities here, all right? You don't have to do it. Just bringing a little back right over here. And there you have it. Now is the time, my friend, to zoom out and have a look. Sometimes we go overboard and this looks overboard. Now, if you open up the hue saturation adjustment, we have talked about this before. You see, everything has returned back to normal. Where are the changes we made? Well, we have to go back to that section. Right now, it is set to master. So let's click on that. It was inside of yellows. If you don't find it inside of yellows, it might have just moved towards reds or greens. So you can just pick and see where it is. Usually if it was in yellows, it would be in yellows. Sometimes when we move the range too much towards the greens, then it might change to greens, or too much towards the reds, then it might change to reds. Okay. Now let's make this a little smaller. And now you can adjust it to your liking. You can keep it at that and decrease the opacity, or you can just work with these. I'm just going to decrease the lightness slightly, increase the saturations a little bit, and play with the hue. This to me looks a little more natural, and there you have it. Here's the before. See, do you see the difference? Here is the after. You see that? Awesome change, isn't it? Now this is a little heavy-handed. I purposely did it heavy-handed so that you can look at the before and after. For more natural results, you would just simply decrease the opacity to something like 60%, or now have a look. It looks natural, isn't it? So you can leave it at 60, or I'm just going to increase it a little higher to 80 because this is a tutorial, a course. You need to look at the before and after. Okay, after you have done this, if you think this is all right, you can stop right here. If the model feels this is amazing, you can stop right here. However, if the model wishes that you also work on the teeth to kind of just work on the shape and the lining of the teeth, you can do that as well. All right. Always keep in mind that we have to be respectful towards the client as well. Let's go ahead and press Ctrl, Alt, Shift, and E. Now this will create a stamp visible layer at the very top. Now on that, we're going to use Liquify to fix the shape. Now some of you might go and ask, Unmesh, why don't we correct the shape first and then apply hue saturation? That way it would be absolutely non-destructive. Well, it would be. It would be. And I'm not saying it's a wrong way to do it. If you feel that it's a better way to do it for you, then go ahead and do it. There is no judging here. There's no debating here. Photoshop is an art. Why I do it? Let me explain. Here's why I do the whitening first. In this case, because when I looked at the image first, I felt that that's an obvious problem, that's a bigger problem that I need to fix. After I fixed the yellowish areas, I felt that maybe we can work a little bit on the shape, as we discussed before. The problems that are obvious to you, the problems that look bigger to you, that you can actually see first, I tend to fix that first and work on the little problems later. That's how I work. You can work in whatever way you want. There is no right or wrong. Okay? So once we have just created this stamp visible layer, and then we have to convert it into a smart object by going to filter and then convert for a smart filter, so that whenever we apply Liquify, we can change its values later. Now let's just name it Liquify for your convenience. Let's go to filter and then Liquify. Now, the thing to keep in mind here that is we have to be gentle about it. Let's zoom in, and with the forward warp tool right here, make the brush of the size of the thing that you want to move. Remember that always. Let me repeat that for you. Make the brush of the size of the thing that you want to move. So in this case, if there's a teeth that you want to move up or down, make the brush of that size. Keep the pressure low. And by the way, you can always hold the Alt key or the Option key and the right mouse button and drag it right or left to kind of increase or decrease the size, just as you do with the brush. All right. And you can drag it up and down to increase or decrease the pressure. We're going to keep the pressure low at about 20. All right. Now, if you're using a Mac, that you would have to hold Option and Control and then drag. We have talked about it in the brush lesson, I guess. Anyway, so you can also control the pressure and size from here. No big of a deal. Now, I feel that this teeth needs to go a little down to match with that of the others. And you can also just fine-tune the lips as well. Slowly and gradually nudge it. Sometimes we tend to go a little overboard with Liquify, and we're going to address that later as well, but it's always a good idea to nudge it. See here, the teeth is a little not that long as the right hand side. So we're going to just make it a little longer and just adjust the shape, overall shape. Here it looks okay to me. Yeah, we don't have to do very much adjustment here. It's all right. Very minimal adjustment, my friend. Okay. Just we have to maintain symmetry. That's it. And a little asymmetry is what makes faces natural. So don't make it too symmetric. So if you have a look at the before and after, here's the before, here's the after. See the change in the teeth right there? Just a little bit correction. And if you think you have gone a little overboard, you do have undo on a slider. Okay, with Liquify, opacity won't work because the positions are changing. So instead, in here, the substitute for opacity is reconstruct. Click on reconstruct and a revert reconstruction dialog box is going to show up. You can, if you take it all the way to the left, it would be like you did nothing. If you take it all the way to the right, it'll show you all the changes. So it's like undo on a slider. Have a look. This is nothing. This is all the changes you made. So I'm going to keep it somewhere in between at about 65% and hit OK. Hit OK. There we go. Little change, very little change. Here's the before, here's the after. And this is a real world example. You can actually stop right here. So let me share with you the overall before and after. So here's the before. Take a look at it. And here is the after. So that is a simple example to understand how to clean up teeth or retouch teeth in Photoshop. Now let's get into something a little more challenging. By the way, before we move on to something extremely challenging, I just remembered I have to show you how important it is to do as less as possible. Have a look at this example. The teeth look perfect, okay? In all of the cases. However, if you look at this, the color is fine. There are no yellow patches. There's only one thing that I feel that might drag the attention of the viewer towards it. Viewer. And that is, have a look at the teeth right here. It's a little longer than the left. It's not much. If you zoom in, you cannot tell, but sometimes some photos are taken in such a way that it can really distract your attention towards it. All right. First of all, being respectful. Secondly, let's work on this. Press Ctrl or Command J to make a copy of the background layer. Then let's go to Filter, Convert for Smart Filters, hit OK. Thirdly, let's go to Filter, Liquify. That's it. That's all we have to do. Let's zoom in right over there. Scrubby zoom for some reason doesn't work inside of the Liquify dialog box. I just wish Photoshop does that. Makes that work. Anyway, so let's make it a little smaller. Just little nudges here and there. And there you go. It fixes that. And we can stop right here. Hit OK. And boom, here's the before, here's the after. Now, our attention doesn't completely go over there. If you want to just line it up even more, you can. But remember, teeth is not always all in one line. There are different shapes of teeth, right? You have studied it in biology, right? There are some for biting and there are some for tearing apart. There are some for chewing. So all of the teeth are of different sizes. Don't just bring it all in one line. Anyway, so now let's work on something a little more challenging. Let's close this. I don't want to save it. Let's take a look at this one. We have a ton of challenges right here that we need to fix. Let's get started with the very first challenge. The first thing that we need to fix right here, I feel, is not the shape. The shape is not the problem. I feel that you can fix the shape later if you want. I feel that there are lots of yellow patches, and it's not just yellow. Some areas are a little dark too. So first of all, let's fix the color by going to hue saturation again, and we're going to repeat the same process. Let's go ahead. With the help of the hand, click on any yellow part. Let's increase the hue and the saturation all the way to the right. Now it looks weird with the beard green. That rhymed. Let's make the panel a little larger. And the reason we do it is that we have more control over the range right here. Let's make it first of all small. And bring it to the left. Alright, let's extend it. I think we have extended a little much. Now let's make the transition smoother. Okay. That looks about right. For the right hand side, let's just extend it all the way. Now let's bring the hue and the saturation back to 0. Now, make it a little smaller. Make the panel a little smaller. Now let's work with lightness, saturation, and you can also work with hue if you want. I feel first of all, let's make the yellow go by decreasing the saturation. And make it brighter by simply increasing the lightness. If you go too much, definitely it's not going to look all right. Okay. You can also play with the hue a little bit. If you move it to the left, it works. Okay. So here's the before, here's the after. We sure have come a long way. Now I feel that probably lightness can come down a bit, or maybe saturation can come up a bit. Okay. To make it look more natural. Now let's select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I, and with the help of the brush, white as the foreground color, just make sure it's a soft round brush, opacity and flow at 100, mode normal, just paint over the teeth, just the teeth area. That's it. Okay. Now you can just zoom in and work with the range and see what works for you. So if I just increase the range a little bit, maybe it would work. Let's bring it down. Let's make it narrower. Let's just scroll down. All right. So let's see how much can we bring it. Okay, that looks about right to me. Very accurate right there. So after you make the adjustments, it's very important to just play with the range to see which setting looks good for you. Okay. Now the second thing is that we fix the yellows, but there are some areas that are just dark. So how do we brighten that up? How do we brighten or darken things? What is the technique that we learned? You guessed it right. Dodging and burning, if you guessed it. If not, now you know. So let's do a little bit of dodging and burning to kind of fix this. Dodging and burning is so versatile. There are a couple things in Photoshop, couple of techniques in Photoshop that are so important to learn that you have applications of it all throughout. And dodging and burning is one of them. Now we're going to use a very simple technique to dodge and burn. Let's create a blank new layer. We have discussed this before. And change the blend mode to soft light. Now let's first of all name it Dodging and Burning. Take the brush, take a soft round brush, and you will paint in this layer with black and white to dodge or burn. So if you want to dodge or brighten, paint with white, and if you want to burn, paint with black. Make sure the flow is low this time. 1 or 2% is fine, so I'm going to set it to 2%. And let's zoom in and just dodge some of the areas which we feel is dark. So I'm going to zoom out a bit so that we can see. If you zoom in too much, it's hard to tell. So find that sweet spot for yourself. And let's just adjust the size of the brush and keep painting with black or white. I feel that flow of 1% would work. Now have a look at the corner of the teeth. These are the areas that you want to bring forward. So therefore, let's brighten that as well. This area as well. So these seem very dark. So painting on that makes it a little more cleaner. Now as we are dodging and burning, I can notice that there are some parts of the teeth that are there's also a little bit of color left in there. Because if you turn that off, you can see that those areas already had a little bit of pink. We just removed the yellows, so the pink is still there. So to fix that, that's a very easy fix. To fix that, just above hue saturation, create a brand new layer. Take the brush and then make sure when the eyedropper is selected, sample current and below is selected. You take the brush and this time you can set the flow to around a little higher number, like 10 or 20%. I'm going to set it to 10% and change the blend mode to color because that's what we are fixing. Now take a sample from surrounding areas and just paint over that area. That's it. Let's increase the flow to about 40%. Let's take a sample from a surrounding area and simply paint over that area. So in this case, okay. See that? That's how we fix those patches. Here as well, see this pink that we need to fix. There you go. This pink that we need to remove. Okay. There's a little pink right over there. Can you see it? Have a look. So that is what we need to fix. We're going to take a sample from here, paint over there, and that goes away. That was just for a little tiny corrections here and there. So we're going to fix these as well. Lots of colors inside, so it's important to fix them. Just by working on that, see how much of a change we have made. If you turn this layer off, see all of these patches of pink here and there. So if you turn that on, you would see all of that goes away and it begins to look natural. You can name this color correction. Now let's get back to DNB, dodging and burning. Let's set the foreground and background color back to white and black. To do that, press D for defaults, which is gonna set the foreground and the background color back to black and white. You can then press X to toggle between the foreground and the background, decrease the flow back to 1%, and let's resume working on the teeth. Now at this point, the zoomed in state looks okay. Let's see what happens when we zoom out. There's still lots of changes we have to make. But have a look at the before and after. Here's the before, here's the after. See, we have made quite an improvement. I feel we need to go back to hue saturation and go back to yellows and probably work with a few sliders. If we just increase the lightness a little more or decrease the saturation a little more, it might help us. Now let's get back to dodging and burning and resume just dodging and burning. Actually, we're just dodging. Now take a look. We have done major improvements here. Here's the before with all the dark patches. Here's the after. Look at that. Before, after. See that major change? Now, after that, do not forget about the crevices or the valleys where one teeth ends and the other one starts. Usually, those areas can get a little darker that we need to work on. So the easiest way to work on these areas is to just simply brighten it. So with the same dodging and burning layer, you can just give the teeth a shape by brightening those areas. Once this is done, we still have some colors to fix. So let's come back to color correction. Let's take back the brush flow this time. Let's go a little higher to about 30%. Now, let's take a sample of this one. Let's continue the gum right here. I feel that this one needs to continue. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just a dodging and burning fix. So let's give it the actual color. Let's come right here. Just remove the pinks from right here. And we need to come back dodging and burning and fix that. If that doesn't fix it, then we probably will have to use the clone stem tool. And I don't want to do that. I want to keep it as natural as possible. So let's get back to 2%. And now let's just adjust it. Brighten certain areas to give the teeth a shape. Let's go with 1. We have to be extra careful now. Now that looks a little decent. We still want a line there. The teeth cannot be continuous. It's actually just, you know, there's something stuck there. Let's just create a stem visible layer. Control Alt Shift and E at the very top. Let's just take this area. Okay. Press Control or Command J. And now you can actually delete the stem visible layer. Take that and bring it right over here. Once it kind of matches, you can right click on it and then choose warp and probably try to match it just like this. You can also move this area. There you go. It matches pretty much, and hit enter or return. Now you create a mask, click on the mask button, take the brush with black as the foreground color, make the brush a little larger, make sure it's a soft brush, flow at 100 and just soften out the areas, the edges. Okay. Now you have something there. Let's take a look. Here's the before. It's just one confused mess. Here's the after. There is something there. Okay. I feel we need to brighten just that area. So create a curves adjustment layer and limit it just to that layer by holding the Alt key or the Option key and clicking on between those two layers. And just create a point in the middle. Take it up slightly to match with that. Okay, so here's the before, here's the after. We have matched it just so slightly. Let's take a look at the overall before and after. Zoom out. Here is the before. Here's the after. Major development, isn't it? Before, after. Again, if you think it's too much, you can select the topmost layer, hold the Shift key, select the bottommost layer, press Ctrl or Command G to group it, and you can just decrease the overall opacity. So for this example, 78 seems to be fine. And this is a nice retouch. Here's the before, here's the after. On top of that, if you want to work the shape, you can liquify and do that. That's up to you. But that is how to work with challenging images where you have to do a little more than just removing the yellows. Now let me share with you one more example. I've already done it. I just wanted to demonstrate how the same techniques are applied right over here. All right. So similarly, in this case, have a look. We needed to not only work with the yellow areas, but also correct the shape, do a little dodging and burning. So we did all that. First of all, with hue saturation, we took care of the yellows. Done. After that, with dodging and burning, we did most of the heavy lifting. So with dodging and burning, have a look. It's just a night and day difference, isn't it? After dodging and burning, just a little liquify to kind of bring the shape together. And we didn't do much. We have to keep the originality. Have a look. We just have made this area a little smaller and this area a little longer so that it matches with the right hand side. And if you zoom out and have a look at the before and after, you can tell. Here is the before, here's the after. See the change right there? Again, here's the before, here's the after. The exact same process. With liquify, of course. Now it is time for us, my friend, to work with the lips. First of all, let's start with defining the shape of the lips. Right now, if you have a look, the lips look pretty fine. And if you want to keep it natural, we don't have to do anything much. But if you really want to define the shape or really want to bring out the dimension in the lips, these are the steps. First of all, we need to make a perfect selection of the lips. To do that, I would recommend using the pen tool. Press P for the pen tool. And now let's start right here. Okay. Create a point, click and drag to create a curve. Let's just end it right over here. Now you can adjust it by holding the Control or Command and then adjusting this anchor point. Now from here, we can do one more right over here. But I feel that this area needs to go a little down. So let's click to create a point and hold the controller command and click and drag to just bring it down. If you wanted to keep it a little softer, if you wanted to keep it a little curvish, you can hold the Alt key, the Option key, click and drag in the direction of the path to make it a curve. All right. Now hold the controller command and just adjust the position. Let's do the same for this side. Let's adjust the position, make sure everything is accurate. All right. Now let's continue right over here. That looks okay. Let's continue it right over there. It's not hard. If you want to learn how to use the pen tool, there is a lesson on the pen tool. Do watch that. Now when I tried to move, all of the points moved. So hold the controller command. Sometimes you have to click on the point twice to just have that point selected. Now this position is all right. This position needs to go out a little bit. So click to create a point just on that area and you can take it a little outside. See, create a point, bring it a little outside. All right, the rest of the areas seem okay. And maybe this point needs to go down a bit. Okay, that looks to be a nice path. Now, you can work on the path as much as you like and you can just choose what works for you. You can modify it later, but I'm gonna stop right here because this can get really addictive. So now once you have the path there, you can go to the Paths tab and just name it so that the path doesn't go away later by accident. Let's name it Lips and we can always come back to this and create selections with it, do whatever we want. Now, to create a selection with a path, you can press and hold Control Enter, Command Enter to do that. Or you can just right click on the path and choose Make Selection. And you can add feather right here or add that later. That's up to you. So 0 feather is fine for now. Now, to look at how the feather will be in place, because right now if you apply a feather to the selection, you cannot really visualize it. To visualize it better, press Q. Okay. Now you're in the quick mask mode. Anything which is selected will be in its original color. Anything that is not selected will be in red. Now, if you want to adjust the colors of the quick mask mode, you can just click on this icon right there. See, double click on that icon, quick mask mode. If you click on that icon once, quick mask mode will turn on and turn off. If you press Q, the same thing would happen. But if you double click on this icon, you can choose what the color you want and where. Do you want a red color in the masked areas? So have the masked areas checked. Do you want a red color in the selected areas? So that way the selected areas would be red. So for this particular instance, I feel that let's keep it for selected areas and keep the opacity at about 75% so that we can really see what's happening. Don't forget to change that back later. So this is the selection right now. If I press Q, this shows up. We are in the quick mask mode. Let's blur it. Go to Filter, Blur and Gaussian Blur. Now keep in mind the selection is being blurred, okay? So let's zoom out and slowly and gradually increase the radius and stop at the point where it looks natural and right. So I feel 2.5 would be a good place to be. Or I would even go with 2.4, a little less than that. You can even go lesser if you really want a fine lip shape. A lot of high-end retouching work has that. It's up to you. If you want a little more natural look, you can keep it higher. So for me, I feel that 2.4 is a good number. Now that this is blurred, if you press Q again, it comes back to selection and the selection has a feather to it. Cool, isn't it? Now, don't forget to create a brand new layer while you're doing this. And let's name this Defining the Shape. Now, all we need to do is to take the clone stamp tool, make sure the sample is current and below, and we need to paint outside, clean up the outside, but right now the inside is selected. So to invert the selection, press Ctrl Shift I or Command Shift I. The selection is now inverted. So let's zoom in, and with the clone stamp tool selected, hold the Alt key or the Option key, click to take a sample from nearby, and just paint right over here. You're just cleaning up the outside. Now, if the marching ants are disturbing you, you can always press Ctrl or Command H to hide it momentarily. And now let's work on it. It's still there, it's still at work. Marching ants are working for you, but it's just not visible. Paint there. See how that cleans up pretty nicely? So similarly, let's do the rest of the areas. You don't have to clean up all of the areas. Some areas do have the shine. You can leave it a little bit at that. Now, I do understand that some of it is looking weird and awkward, but don't worry about it. We always have our best friend, and you already know who that is: opacity. Let's take a look at the before and after. So this, my friend, is the before. This is the after. Look at the change we have made. Looks major, doesn't it? I feel that the bottom needs to be cleared up a little more. So for the bottom, you can also do this. You can also use the healing brush tool instead of the clone stamp for some areas after you've worked with the clone stamp tool. Now the bottom area to me looks a little awkward, so we're gonna take the eraser tool, decrease the flow to about 5%, and let's start erasing this area. That's all right. Come back to the healing brush tool and just fix that one area. Done, looks pretty good. Now let's do it inside out. So right now, if we press Ctrl or Command H, you would notice that the selection is of the outside areas. Let's select the lips back again. Press Ctrl Shift I, Command Shift I to just invert the selection back again. Now the lips are selected. Get back to the clone stamp tool and do the same from the inside towards the outside edge. So hold the Alt key or the Option key, click to take a sample and paint around the edge. Now you can always press Ctrl or Command H to hide the marching ants. Now that it's done, you can press Ctrl or Command D to deselect. You might think, why deselect? The selection is still there, my friend. If you press Ctrl or Command H, you can see that it's there. Press Ctrl or Command D to deselect. Have a look. Here's the before, here's the after. Look how defined the lips are now. Let's zoom out and take a look. Here's the before, here's the after. Now, of course, this is too much. Before we go ahead and decrease the opacity, there are some areas that we want to correct. The corner of the lips, it absolutely looks unnatural and looks like we have applied a paint there. So we have to remove the effect away from the corners. To do that, click on the mask button, take the brush, black as the foreground color, just dab on the corners. All right, take it away from the other side too. Now it looks natural around the corners. Now we can go ahead and decrease the opacity to our liking. Let's keep it at about 65. All right, 100% is just a little too unnatural. 65 is somewhere in between. Now again, I'm doing a very heavy-handed work just to show you the difference between before and after. If this is the look that you're going for, perfect, fine. This is the right number for you. But if you wanted to keep it natural, I would go somewhere at about 30-ish. So not even that much, 34-ish, okay? For this example, let's keep it back to 65. The next step is fixing the blemishes or the cuts on the lips. So if you look at it, she has a lot of cuts that we can fix. To do that, let's create a brand new layer, and you can use the regular healing brush tool and make sure the sample is current and below. Blend mode normal. Hold the Alt key or the Option key, click to take a sample and paint over a cut. And it would fix that. No big of a deal. Or you can also use the patch tool. By the way, to use the patch tool, you would have to create a stamp visible layer. Press Ctrl, Alt, Shift and E to create a stamp visible layer, and then you can select the patch tool. I find that in this case, patch tool would work really well. So there are a couple areas that need attention. So let's select that area and bring it to an area which looks a little normal, and it's fixed. Similarly, let's do it for the other areas. There you go, we have made major changes. Let's take a look. Here's the before, here's the after. Just look at it. Amazing, isn't it? On top of that, you can also use dodging and burning to just equalize things up. Let's create a brand new layer. Similarly, let's change the blend mode to soft light. Take the brush, black and white as the foreground and the background color, and then set the flow to a really low number like 1 or 2. So I'm going to set it to 2 and just paint with white or black to dodge and burn. Now we have done very slight dodging and burning here. So here is the before, here is the after. Just had to even things out. Let's name this layer D and B so that we know what each layer is doing. This is just patching. We don't actually need this layer. Let's delete that. Alright, so after dodging and burning, we can work on a little bit on the color. So let's create a hue saturation adjustment layer. And again, with the help of the hand, let's target the lip color, take the hue and the saturation all the way to the right hand side and make the range a little narrower just to make sure only the lips are being affected. Let's make the panel a little larger and lips a little smaller. And now, slowly and gradually, why not we make the panel a little thin? All right, let's bring it down and we're gonna adjust the position of this. We don't want it to get out of the lips, so we'll have to find a happy place. Alright. And even if it does get out, what is the issue? Because we already have a mask, don't we? That looks about right. Now, let's bring back the settings back to normal so that it doesn't look really weird. Now, you can do whatever you want with this. You can just decrease the lightness and make the lips a little darker and then increase the saturation to bring back the color. It's up to you as to how you want to go about it. Alright. So here's the before, here's the after. Added a little color to the lips, but we want it to be limited just to the lips. So let's go to parts again. See how we needed this later? Hold the controller command and click on the thumbnail. Now that we have a selection, we have to feather the selection this time. Let's go to select, modify, and then feather. What was the blur that we had applied? 2.4, right? Let's apply 2.4. And now we just want that area to be white inside the mask and the rest of the areas black. So press Ctrl Shift I, Command Shift I to invert the selection. Make sure the foreground color is black. Alt backspace or Option Delete. And now you have it applied only on the lips. So here's the before, here's the after. Just a little bit color right there. Let's set the opacity to about 75%. Now comes the final part for retouching lips, and that is dodging and burning to bring out the shape and dimension. So let's create one more layer for dodging and burning. Let's name this D and B as well, shape. Okay. Change the blend mode again to soft light. Take the brush, white and black as the foreground and the background color. And now let me give you some tips on where to dodge and where to burn. The areas that you want to bring forward or towards you or towards the camera, those are the areas which you are going to dodge, and the areas that are just receding back, those are the areas that we are going to burn. So as a general rule of thumb, this is how I would do it. All right. So I would dodge this area. If there was a little bit brightness there, that would be more applicable. In this area, it's not very applicable, but in most cases it can be. Let me change it to a hard round brush so that you can see what's happening. So this area is the area that I would dodge. This area I would burn slightly. This area again I would dodge, and this area a little bit burning. Okay, so that is how the sequence would go. Let's name the sequence and let's just keep it for reference. You turn it off. Let's come back to dodging and burning. Select the regular soft round brush and flow at about 1 or 2%, and let's start dodging and burning. So at the top, let's dodge. Just keep the shape in mind. So here's the before, here's the after. Just a little bit of brightening at the top to add a little more shine there. It really helps bring out the shape. Okay, once we do that, let's burn this area up slightly. Keep checking before, after. See, we are already bringing in a lot of shape here. Now dodge this area. Parts of these areas are already bright, so we don't have to touch that too much. Now it's time for us to burn the bottom, just above the chin, where there's a little bit of depressed area. Now I know we have done too much. Don't worry, we're gonna erase that. Just bringing out the shape, and then all in all, we're gonna equally lighten that area, okay? So the shape has been brought out. Now we can just hold the tilde key. Your brush will turn into eraser with the same properties, and then when you paint over it, see, they're going away. There you have it, my friend. Let's take a look at the before and after of dodging and burning. So here's the before, and here is the after. Look at the change right there. It's massive. Here's the before, here's the after. Now, of course, we don't want to go that harsh. So decrease the opacity, slowly and gradually increase it, and stop at the place where the shape just begins to show. So 45 is a natural place to be in. Now let's take a look at the overall before and after. Now, I have not cleaned up everything right there. You can take all the time in the world to really give it a perfect look. But from what we have done, here is the before and here is the after. Massive, massive change, isn't it? Before, after. Now, if you think it's too much, you can group all the layers together, select the bottommost layer with the adjustment, hold the shift key, select the topmost layer, press Ctrl or Command G. Now you can decrease the opacity. Now, in between there's a patching layer, which is a stamp visible layer. So this layer can be a little redundant at the moment, but anyway, let's just put it all in one group and just decrease the opacity of the overall thing. I would keep it at about 60%, and there you have something natural. And if you want a little more naturality here, you can keep it at 30%. Still, it's a nice, clean retouch. If you want to look at the absolute power, here's the before, here's the after. For realistic purposes, we're going to keep it at about 65. There you have something natural. Before, after. Beautiful, isn't it? So that's how to retouch teeth and lips, one of the most integral part of portrait retouching, and they deserve the attention because they're one of the most important emotion creators of the face. Always keep in mind the approach to working on this. When working with teeth, look at the problem that's obvious to you. Is it shape? Is it color? And then you can work on that first. By the way, that's how I do it. That's the approach that I recommend. Your approach can be absolutely different. My job is to teach you different techniques in different ways. And at the end of the day, when it comes to art, there is no right or wrong. The important thing to keep in mind is learning when to stop. Sometimes we get too overboard fixing or dodging and burning the teeth, the patches, or just working on the lips too much that sometimes we can overdo it. So it's essential to learn when to stop. And even if you just went out of bounds and kept working on it, in the end, always know that opacity is your best friend. I hope this lesson helped you. I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you so much for watching this one. Till then, stay tuned and make sure that you keep creating.